Our second speaker from Chennai is Mr. C. Vidhyashankar. Vidhyashankar is also based out of Chennai and his office and is working with Care Ratings as manager. He has an industry experience of over 6 years. He is part of the ratings team tracking the large corporate clients in manufacturing and BFSI sector. We'll begin the webinar with the opening comments from Mr. Milind Gadkari. Thereafter, Mr. Sudhakar and Mr. Vidhyashankar from our Chennai office will take you through the presentation, which will be visible on your screen. In case of queries, please key in your questions in the slot provided. We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Now, may I request Milind sir to begin the session.
Thank you, Mridul. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Milind Gadkari, Senior Director, Care Ratings. Indian education sector has one of the largest networks in the world. As on March 31st, 2016, India had more than 15 lakh schools, nearly 51,000 higher educational institutions and 799 universities. The government's thrust on improving the country's literacy rate through higher enrollments as well as ensuring lower dropouts in schools has been driving the growth in enrollment in the senior secondary as well as higher education segments. While the government has significant presence in the school education with 58% share in terms of number of schools, private sector has a large presence with 64% share in higher education segment. Various initiatives taken by government has resulted in significant increase in enrollments in school, which is expected to aid growth in higher education segment going forward. The sector remains highly regulated with constant intervention from both central and state governments as well as other regulatory bodies. At the same time, government has been increasing budgetary allocation to the sector in its quest to achieve gross enrollment ratio of 30% in higher education by 2020. This, coupled with favorable demographics, provides high growth opportunities for private sector participation. The financial risk profile of educational institutions having good brand image and long track record would continue to remain stable. In this presentation, we will cover the following. First, structure of Indian education sector, trends in enrollments across school and higher education, growth potential of higher education in India, challenges faced by education sector and credit perspective. Now I hand over the mic to Mridul.
Thank you, Milind sir. We would now link it to our colleagues in Chennai and request them to begin the presentation. Please give me a minute on this.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to one and all for taking your time out and being present for the webinar. We welcome you all for the presentation on Indian education sector, challenges and opportunities. We'll just give a brief background on the Indian education sector before we delve into the presentation. Indian education sector is one of the largest education networks in the world, with approximately 1.52 million schools as on March 31st, 2016, and over 50,000 higher educational institutes, including 760 universities, both government as well as private. India is one of the youngest nations in the world, with over 50% of population in the age group of 0 to 24 years, as per the census 2011 estimates. This provides a big market and a big opportunity. Government has also been giving enough thrust for the education sector in its increasing budgetary allocations every year. For FY17 budgeted estimates, approximately 3.71% of GDP has been spent on Indian education sector. Indian education sector is on the concurrent list of the Constitution of India, with constant interventions from both the central as well as state government. Indian education system remains highly fragmented with number of players spread across the country and remains tightly regulated by the government as well as the various regulators. We would next take you through the various industry segments in the Indian education sector. Indian education sector can be broadly classified into three broad segments. The first being the formal education segment, the vocational education segment, and the informal education segment. In this presentation, we would focus on the higher education segment, but we'll also just give a brief on the two growing segments, which is the vocational and informal segment as well. However, share of these segments represent only 2 to 3% of the overall education sector market, but it offers enough potential for future growth. In the formal education segment, it is classified further into school education and higher education. Vocational education provides value-added skill training in sectors such as aviation, retail, information technology, tourism, etc. to enhance the employability and to eradicate the unemployment situation in the country. Informal education is primarily focused towards preschools, coaching classes, open and distance education, information technology in schools, and smart classes, so on and so forth. As I just said, we'll give a brief background on the informal education and the vocational education stream, but our presentation will focus purely on higher education segment and its growth opportunities. Informal education is a segment which is not very regulated, and it is dominated by a lot of private sector players. The major subsegments in the informal education segment would include the preschools, ICT, information communication technology, and smart classes, coaching classes. In the preschool segment, the growth is primarily driven by the increasing nuclear family setup and a mushrooming number of preschools for kids in the age group of 2 to 3 years. The information communication technology and smart classes is also given a lot of push by the Indian government, and this is being implemented in both the government school as well as private schools to enhance the learning experience for children. Coaching classes also has a big market in India with a huge potential for entrance exams such as the engineering, medical exams, and then the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT classes. So this is also a big market for India. This is primarily driven by the increasing awareness and disposable income of the parents, and also a huge push and government policy initiatives towards introduction of information technology in schools. Next, we'll give a brief background on the vocational educational stream. Vocational education is also not a highly regulated sector. It aims to impart job-oriented courses for making people ready for on the job. It focuses mainly on value-added courses in the sectors such as retail, textiles, real estate, electronics, information technology. This is primarily to tackle the rising unemployment problem in India. Government of India has started a Skill India mission. A new ministry by name of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship has been set up during November 2014. The main objective is to impart skill development courses and partnering with the industry. In 2016-17, around 17,000 crore has been allocated towards the same. However, 2 to 3% of the overall market size is contributed by the informal and vocational education segment, but it offers enough potential for future growth. We would now look into the formal education segment, which comprises of the school as well as the higher education segment. Government has a significant presence in school education with 58% share in terms of number of schools. Our private sector has significant presence with 64% share in higher education segment. In the past decade, there has been a growth in both schools and higher education institutes. This has been made possible with government's significant focus in opening a lot of schools across the segment, especially in the rural areas. Also in the higher education segment, government has facilitated approvals of opening significant number of higher education institutes in the recent past, and also increasing intake in the existing courses. The same has resulted in an increase in number of schools and higher education institutes in the past decade. Next, we take a look at the enrollment levels, historical enrollment levels in the schools. In the past few years, the gross enrollment levels across the various classes has seen a visible uptrend. One of the key factors contributing for the increasing enrollment trend is government's push by way of implementing key schemes like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyama Shiksha Abhiyan, Midday Meal Scheme, etc. These schemes' objective is to provide compulsory education to children between the ages of 6 to 14, even in rural areas, especially where the dropout rates are very high. These programs seek to open new schools in those habitations which do not have schooling facilities and strengthen existing school infrastructure through provision of additional classrooms, toilets, drinking water, maintenance and improvement. Government's focus on these schemes has continued in the Union Budget 2017-18 as well, with a budget outlay of 23,500 crores towards Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, around 3,830 crores towards RMSA and other such schemes. These schemes have resulted in continuous improvement in the enrollment ratios in schools. Next, we'll take a look at the enrollment in the higher education segment. With significant increase in the gross enrollment ratio at the schools levels, this is actually reflected in high growth in the enrollment in the higher education level. Also, private sector plays a major share in the higher education segment. Government has facilitated the private education sector in providing fast-track approvals for opening new colleges, new institutes in the past 5 years. During the 12th five-year plan 2012 to 17, government had set up an ambitious target of achieving a gross enrollment ratio of around 25% by 2017 and around 30% by 2020. As on 2015, we stand at an enrollment ratio of 24%, which is actually in line with the achievement of 25% by 2017 and also has a potential to grow up to 30% in 2020. Next, we take a look at the higher education sector, the stream-wise enrollment. If we take a look at the stream-wise enrollment from the past decade, there is a visible shift in the demand or preference for courses in the engineering and technology domain. The share of arts and science courses has declined from 45% in 2005 to around 40%, whereas the share of engineering and technologies has increased. One reason also is partly due to the boom in the information technology segment in the past decade. But however, within the engineering segment, there is a demand for courses like computer science, information technology, electronics, whereas the traditional courses like the mechanical, civil engineering has very muted demand. We will focus on the two important higher education streams, which is the medical college and the engineering colleges in India. If you take a look at the medical colleges in India, the state-wise distribution, we can see that the number of medical colleges present in India is skewed towards a few states. With the southern states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, and Andhra Pradesh, along with Maharashtra and UP, together contribute around 63% of the medical colleges and around 64% of the total available seats. For 2015-16, around 64,000 MBBS seats are available in India. With respect to medical colleges, demand far exceeds the supply. With respect to engineering colleges, the same trend is visible again in terms of state-wise distribution of number of colleges. Around 4,400 engineering colleges are present in India. Here again, South Indian states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana, Maharashtra, MP, they alone contribute to 73% of engineering colleges in India. With respect to the key engineering intake in seats over the few key states, Tamil Nadu actually leads the pack with 280,000 annual seats in engineering, followed by Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. But however, there is a visible trend which is seen with respect to enrollment levels in engineering colleges. Actually, if you see in the key states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, in the last 3 to 4 years, there has been a year-on-year decline in enrollment levels. For example, in the state of Tamil Nadu, in 2012-13, the enrollment levels were as high as 70%, which has drastically declined and stood at around 55% in 2015-16. Same is the trend that is witnessed in states like Andhra Pradesh and Telangana as well. One reason that could be contributed to this is the rising challenges with respect to unemployment in India, the quality of education imparted in various colleges, and the IT sector headwinds which is presently being faced in the last 1 year. We would now focus on the challenges faced by the higher education institutes from a financing and credit rating perspective. In India, funding remains a very key challenge for the education sector. In India, running an educational sector with a profit motive is still difficult. So the key challenges can be clubbed into 3 major factors, which is the regulatory factors, the financial factors, and the business factors. The predominant organizational structure of private educational institutes in India is not for profit, and they are mostly managed by trusts and societies. Also, the presence of multiple regulators along with requirement of numerous approvals and regulatory compliances poses a major hurdle for the education sector. Education sector being on the concurrent list of the Constitution of India is being governed by both the central and state government with frequent interventions. There is a lot of interventions in the form of fee fixation, seat sharing, admissions, where the private education institutes do not have a free hand. However, there is a class of universities such as deemed universities which have relative autonomy in fixation of fees and seat sharing. Also, a recent development is for the medical education, the government has imposed an entrance exam in the form of NEET, which has not been accepted by all the states due to the various reasons such as the quality of education present in those states, wherein some states have actually not keen to accept the NEET. Also, stringent approvals by various regulatory bodies such as the Medical Council of India and All India Council of Technical Education with frequent audits, it poses a huge challenge for the education sector. With respect to the financial factors that the education institute operates in, the one key challenge is on the seasonality or the non-uniformity in cash flows. Education sector being seasonal in nature, predominant fee collection around 60 to 70% happens during the fee period of June to August, whereas recurring expenses is incurred over the year. As such, the institutes face a cash flow mismatch, which is often bridged in the form of working capital loans. And these cash flow mismatches often leads to defaults. With respect to revenue stream and profitability, it is seen that educational institutes which have a good brand name and enjoy high enrollment ratios often have a good revenue stream and growing profitability. Whereas on the contrary, the education institutes which have a very low enrollment ratios or declining ratios actually face trouble in the sense that once the seats that are not filled in a year, it has a cascading effect for the next 3 to 4 years, the capacity remains unutilized. Also, with respect to education sector being a non-profit and often they need to enjoy tax-free status. So 85% of the income is often have to be deployed towards the objective of the trust. So in order to satisfy the criteria, education actually are funded through debt, and this increases the financial burden of those trusts. With respect to certain states such as Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Kerala, many states, often there are procedural delays associated with receipt of payments in terms of government schemes, wherein there is a reimbursement that needs to come from the government for government-sponsored schemes. Often when there is delay in the receipt of the same, the financial burden of the trusts or societies often increase. Often, also the educational institutes, they do not follow uniform or established accounting practices, which actually poses a hindrance for easy finance access. On the business factors, some of the key attributes that distinguishes the educational institutes name and presence across country with a good brand, it often helps those kind of trusts to secure more finance and grow. Enrollment levels has always been the major challenge for education sector, barring a few education sector which the education institutes which have very good enrollment levels. Most of the education institutes have subpar enrollment levels, and this is the one single reason why the financial risk profile of major education institutions have suffered. Often operate in a highly competitive environment with numerous institutes operating in the same vicinity. So this also is one of the key challenges in the education sector. Now coming to the government spending and the budgetary support, there has been an increasing enrollment in higher education sector which is likely to continue in the next few years. Also, government is giving a budgetary support every year in this budget. In 2017, the school education has got around 46,000 crore and higher education segment has got around 33,000 crore. As we had suggested earlier, Ministry of Human Resource Development We'll now look at the present market size and what are the opportunities for private players in the higher education market. In 2015-16, the education market was worth around USD $100 billion. And the higher education segment is poised to grow bigger because of very low gross enrollment ratios in India with respect to other developed economies. There's a huge thrust from the government to improve GER. Also, the major factor that supports that same is the favorable demographics and the rising affordability levels. The increase in gross enrollment ratio at school levels is resulting in high growth of GER in the higher education segment. India has a low rate of enrollment in higher education compared to developed economies. I'd say 24% for India. It compares to 87% in the United States, 65% in Germany, and 63% in Japan. So India still has a long way to go to achieve and compare itself with other developed economies in the world. The capital investment requirements for higher education courses are relatively higher and have a long gestation period with limited scope for the government to invest. This leaves a huge demand-supply gap for the private sector participation. The present higher education population is 3.5 crores. So India is actually a young country with 50% of the population in the age bracket of 0 to 24. This favorable demographics will propel and help the government to achieve its 30% GER mandate by 2020. So the addressable population of 3.4 crore has to necessarily grow to 4.3 crore. This will present huge opportunities for the private sectors. Also, India's economy continues to grow. A huge number of first generation learners will demand access to higher education. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I now hand over to Mridul.
Thank you, Sudhakar and Vidhyashankar. Dear participants, now we'll be taking a break of 2 minutes before we come back to take your queries. You're requested to start keying in a question in the slot provided. I repeat, we'll be taking a break of 2 minutes before we begin our Q&A session. You are please requested to start keying in the questions in the slot provided. Thank you. Hi friends, now we'll begin a Q&A session and Chennai team requested to take over please.
Nitin Raheja has posted a question on market is approximately, it is very approximate numbers, is around 40 billion USD, of which the preschool segment would comprise only in the preschool segment. This is primarily driven by two factors. The concept is actually prevalent only in leading cities, if not, it has not yet percolated to towns and tier 2, tier 3 cities. So the preschool market is actually a very lucrative opportunity and has high potential for entities which are operating in the metro cities and other big cities in India.
The next question is from Mr. Pramod. His question is, what role private sector needs to play to achieve government target of 30% GER? Mainly on account of the huge investment requirements that the higher education demands and the longer gestation period involved. So with respect to addressable market size, there is a huge growth opportunity, and the private players with a established track record can start investing into new geographies and also start new courses other than engineering and medical. As we have also mentioned during the presentation, there has been, though in the past 10 years, there has been shift from arts and science to engineering sector. The increase was mainly driven by demand from the IT sector. Now with the IT sector, so also there are multiple growth opportunities for the private player. And this question from Vinci Cherian. The question is, what is your view on K to 12 segment and the steady increase in fees year on year? Will it sustain? With respect to K to 12 segment, different states follows different policies. Each state has got its own methodology of regulating the fees. For example, with respect to Tamil Nadu, there is a fee fixation committee which receives input from all the schools across the state on various aspects. One in terms of faculty, the experience of faculty, and the educational background of faculties, the kind of infrastructure is provided, the kind of additional co-curricular activities and the related infrastructure availability. Based on the data received from all the schools, for each school, fee is fixed by the fee fixation committee, and this fee is revised once in 3 years. However, with increase in input cost, mainly on the employee cost, on account of the regular inflation and continuous increase in input cost, which is also likely to reflect in the fees charged to the students. Though it is being regulated, there is likely to be a continuous increase in terms of fee charged for the school education. Next question is from Mr. Tarun Verma. The question is, what are the steps taken by governments to regulate quality of education? The government has set up various bodies towards regulation of education at different levels. Especially the regulation is higher on the higher education side, wherein the UGC is a regulatory body which looks into of infrastructure facilities and the quality of education offered in respect of technical courses, mainly on the engineering courses. So, more than from the regulatory perspective, the government is giving larger thrust towards motivating these entities to focus on the quality of education. In order to standardize and measure the quality of education, there are two bodies which are present. One is the NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, and the NBA, National Board of Accreditation. As such, these entities do not regulate the quality of education, whereas they measure the quality of education offered in each institute or in a university based on the various parameters. These bodies looks at the quality of infrastructure, quality of faculty, the performance of the students, and what is the extent of industry interface, and what is the number of papers presented by the professors or the students in this in various subjects. So based on these various parameters, each institute is assigned a ranking. So this acts as enabler, or it motivates the various educational institutions to focus on the quality. So it's more than the regulation, it is an enabling way that the government is looking forward to improve the quality of education. Moreover, since past few years, the government also started coming out with the all India ranking for the various institute. So this also acts as a major enabling factor and motivates the educational institutions to focus on the quality. This question is from Prince Singh. There is a mushrooming of schools from K to 12 throughout the country with substantial capex. In this context, what are the new schools coming in 5 to 6 years? As we have shown in our presentation with respect to the school education, the number of schools have been increasing continuously for the past 10 years. With respect to primary school, the number of schools have gone up from 7.7 lakh in 2005-6 to 8.4 in 2015-16. Though in terms of number, the increase is moderate at 2%. Within this segment, if you look at the share of private and government school, there has been the incremental growth has been primarily coming from the private school. This is mainly on account of the parents' unwillingness or tendency towards preferring private school, mainly on the perception that the government schools do not offer the quality education. So going forward, in terms of school segment, the growth is likely to be moderate at around 3% in terms of number of schools, because mainly in the school level, the enrollment levels have gone up significantly, but the incremental additions are likely to be mainly from the private sector. Next question is from Jibendu Mandal. The question is, how will engineering institute be affected because of IT sector layoff, which may impact campus placement, which are a key factor in engineering stream? As we have shown in our presentation, with respect to the engineering colleges, the major share is from Tamil Nadu, AP, Telangana. These are the states which contributes to or which accounts for the major capacity of the engineering seats. So since 2012-13, there has been continuous decline in enrollment levels, especially in the states. As we stated earlier, because of mainly because of IT boom, there was exponential growth in number of engineering colleges in the last 10 years. And the majority of the colleges, engineering colleges, have been focusing mainly on the IT sector to place the students. Only very few engineering colleges look for having companies across different industries to attract on the placement side. So the colleges which are primarily dependent on IT sector, which has been the case in majority of the cases. So in the near term, the enrollments are likely to remain muted. There could be a marginal reduction in enrollment levels. This is a question from Mr. Ravindra. What is the scope in engineering and management segments? So in terms of engineering segment, we are witnessing continuous drop in enrollment for the past few years due to mainly on lower employment opportunity or lower demand from IT sector. But as we mentioned in our slide, with addressable population growing continuously and the increasing tendency of parents to ensure that their kids are offered best education and they are not left behind in terms of growth or employment opportunities. So despite a drop in enrollment level, there would be a continuous demand for engineering courses, but only colleges which are in a better position and which has shown good track record and brand name will be able to manage higher enrollment levels. As we said, for example, in case of Tamil Nadu, while there is a continuous drop in enrollments levels for the past 3-4 years, we have seen the top 5-10 colleges continue to attract the same number of students and continue to maintain enrollment ratios at 98-99%. So the quality would be the major differentiating factor with respect to engineering segment, and the same applies to the management segment also. So in terms of demand, quality of the placement will be in a better position to cater to the incremental demand. The next question is from Akshat Jori. The question is, how does postgraduate colleges granting MBA degree justify the high amount of tuition fee? What is the regulation or policy governing that in case it's an autonomous body? With respect to autonomous body and MBA courses, there has been no specific regulation which is applicable across India. There are no specific guidelines which regulates or controls the fee of autonomous institutes. The next question is from Manisha Urwal. The question is the experience of new age digital institutes different from the older physical ones? So, in terms of the mode of imparting education, there has been significant changes over the years. There is a trust given to audio or video based way of educating students. So there has been increasing trust both by the government and the private institutes. The government has been focusing mainly on digitizing the content and enabling even the schools at Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4 cities are able to access, so that it improves the quality of education. So definitely in terms of digitization of content, the quality and the uniformity of the content is likely to be much better, and it is unlikely to be affected by the quality of faculty who is going to teach. So there has been significant improvement mainly in terms of experience with respect to the way education is being imparted. There is a question from Manisha Parwal. It's a continuation question. More in terms of profitability of the institution itself and in terms of their sustainability. In terms of digitization of content and communicating or imparting education through digital classrooms, the trend has started 10 years back, and there were many companies which have entered into this segment and started digitizing the content and setting up digital enabled classroom both at the government and private school. If I look at the profitability of these players, the business model of players is such that they need to spend or invest significant amount upfront, one in terms of creating digital content and the related software cost, two in terms of setting up the classrooms. Once this content is ready and the digital classrooms are set up, then there is a continuous business which is coming from the various schools, both government and private. Though in terms of profitability, these companies has been able to generate higher profitability. They faced issues mainly on the liquidity or the receivable side. So the profitability of this digital based schools has been relatively higher. And with respect to sustainability, it is a sustainable business model. As it said, there is an initial upfront investment which would generate returns over a longer period of time tenure. The major reason many of these players in this particular segment has experienced a problem is they ventured into non-core segment like setting up brick and mortar schools or aggressively pursuing growth. These are the factors have resulted in these companies reporting losses. But digitization and offering courses through digital media or setting up ID-enabled classrooms, this is a profitable and a sustainable business.
I think I think answered most of the queries. Now we're short of time. So probably we'll be ending the Q&A session now. Thank you, team. Now may I request Mr. Milind to give his closing remarks, please.
Past few years have seen continuous growth in school enrollment levels supported by various initiatives taken by the governments, including running of schemes such as Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, midday meal schemes, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, among others. In the recent past, gross enrollment ratio has seen healthy growth at upper primary level as well as senior secondary level. Going forward, it is expected to result in improved GR in higher education as well. Given that capital investment requirements for higher education courses are relatively high with relatively longer gestation period and limited scope for government to invest and create necessary infrastructure to meet this demand, higher education sector offers good growth opportunity for private sector. However, this may not be sufficient to sustain or improve private sector's market position or credit profile in the long run. It is to be noted that in the recent past, engineering courses have witnessed moderation in enrollment despite overall increase in GR at higher education levels. In the long term, ability of the institute to differentiate their curriculum, introduce new courses based on the industry requirements, adopt new ways of imparting education, and enhance the skill set of students to make them really employable would increase their competitiveness. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Milind sir, and thanks again to all participants for taking the time out and being a part of this CARE Ratings webinar. We hope the discussion was insightful and look forward to your participation in future also. For further queries, feedback, suggestions, please write to us at cop.com@careratings.com. The email ID would be coming in your feedback box. Thank you and goodbye for now. Questions?